June, 1816. New England. The ground is iron. The sky is a flat, bruised-looking gray. A farmer stands in his field, his breath pluming in the summer air. The corn, a pale green promise, is brittle with frost. In Vermont, the snow is a foot deep. In Quebec, families huddle by their fires, listening to the ice crack on the rivers. It is June. The birds have fallen silent. The livestock, thin and confused, low in their barns. The sun, when it appears at all, is a pale, copper disk. It gives off no warmth. It hangs in the sky like an accusation. Across the Atlantic, in Switzerland, the rain is relentless. It is not a cleansing rain. It is a cold, persistent, biblical flood that turns fields to muck and roads to rivers. In Ireland, the potato crop rots in the ground. In Hungary, brown snow falls. The world is holding its breath. The mechanism of the seasons, the most fundamental promise of nature, has broken. And nobody knows why. They look to the sky and see only a dirty, persistent, dry fog that refuses to break.
And
they look to their scriptures and see omphans of apocalypse.
And the powers that are in heaven
they look to their
shall be
leaders,
shaken.
who have no answers. The question hangs in the frigid air, unspoken but felt in the hollow of every stomach: what has broken the world? We have a simple image of the past. A time of simpler patterns. The seasons turn. The sun rises. The harvest comes. We think of 1816 as a local anomaly. A bizarre footnote. A freak year. A curiosity of almanacs. We imagine isolated pockets of hardship, quickly overcome. This is a failure of imagination. The year without a summer was not a local event. It was the first truly global, interconnected climate catastrophe of the modern world. And the people living through it had no framework to understand it. They were fighting a ghost. It was not an act of God. It was a consequence. The true story doesn't begin in the snows of Vermont. It begins 1 year earlier, and 10,000 miles away, on the other side of the planet. It begins not with a whisper, but with the loudest sound in recorded history. April 10, 1815. The island of Sumbawa, in what is now Indonesia. For a week, the mountain has been rumbling. But this is different. At 7 p.m., Mount Tambora ceases to be a mountain. It becomes a geological event horizon. It erupts with a force 100 times greater than Krakatoa. The sound is heard 1,600 miles away, in Sumatra, where soldiers are dispatched, believing a neighboring settlement is under cannon fire. In an instant, Tambora ejects 12 cubic miles of rock, ash, and magma. It is not a mountain erupting. It is a 4,000-foot tall column of physics and thermodynamics. A pillar of fire and matter, 25 miles high, punches through the atmosphere. The immediate effect is annihilation. A pyroclastic flow, a wave of superheated gas and rock moving at hundreds of miles an hour, scours the island, vaporizing the kingdom of Tambora. Darkness falls over the region for 3 days. Ash, thick and suffocating, rains down, collapsing homes and poisoning water. 90,000 people are dead within weeks. But the mountain's most devastating weapon is not its fire. It is its dust. The most explosive part of the eruption was not magma. It was sulfur. Tambora injected 100 million tons of sulfur dioxide directly into the stratosphere, the stable, windless layer of our upper atmosphere. Far above the clouds, far above the rain, this sulfur began a slow, chemical transformation. It became a mist of microscopic sulfuric acid droplets. A veil. Month by month, the high-altitude jet streams, indifferent to the human world below, carried this veil around the globe. It was an aerosol layer that reflected sunlight back into space. The planet's thermostat had been turned down. By 1816, this shimmering, toxic blanket had enshrouded the Earth. It was not a cloud as we know it.
I have never
It was
seen
the
the like,
dry
sir.
fog reported
It
from
feels
London to
unnatural.
Boston. A persistent, hazy veil that dimmed the sun, reduced temperatures, and, most critically, disrupted the great weather engines of the planet. The monsoon cycles in Asia failed, leading to catastrophic drought in some regions of China and catastrophic floods in others. In Europe, the North Atlantic circulation shifted, pulling cold, wet air across the continent for months on end. The Earth, suffocating under a blanket of its own making, began to fail. The cold was the first shock. The famine was the executioner. In New England, it was called the Poverty Year, or 1800, and froze to death. The May frosts killed the planting. The June snows killed the replanting. The August frosts killed the last, desperate hope. Grain prices, the measure of human survival, exploded.
The price is $50
In America,
a barrel.
the
Take
price
it
of
or
oats,
leave it.
wheat, and flour shot up 500%. The farmer who could not feed his family could certainly not feed his horses. In Europe, the situation was more desperate. The continent was already fragile, exhausted by the Napoleonic Wars. Now, this. In Switzerland, the grain stores were empty. People were seen boiling moss and eating cats. In Ireland, the Engus, cold rain triggered a typhus epidemic that killed 65,000. In England, the price of bread sparked riots. Crowds marched under banners reading "Bread or Blood," seizing wagons and demanding the grain that was being hoarded by the wealthy or sold for export. The social contract, already thin, was tearing apart. This was not a failure of agriculture. It was a failure of the sky. It was the terrifying realization that the systems that support life could simply stop. Not all the consequences were of the body. Some were of the mind. On the shores of Lake Geneva, in the Villa Diodati, a group of young, privileged English radicals found themselves trapped by the incessant, unremitting rain. Lord Byron,
But consider the implications,
Percy
Byron.
Bysshe Shelley,
If life can be
Mary
manufactured
Godwin,
by
his
galvanic
future wife,
force, where then is
and
the
Byron's
soul?
physician, John Polidori. They were refugees from the cold, their plans for boating and mountain tours ruined. For days,
Und in
they
dieser
read ghost
Nacht erhob
stories.
sich der Geist aus seinem
Then,
Grabe,
Byron issued a
suchend nach den
challenge:
Lebenden,
we will
die
each
ihn
write a
geweckt
ghost
hatten.
story. The others produced fragments. But
We will
Mary,
each
just
write
18
a
years old,
ghost
was
story.
consumed by a waking dream. She was brooding on the unhallowed arts of reanimation, on the chilling new science of galvanism, of applying electricity to dead tissue. She looked out at the churning, storm-blasted lake and the unnatural gloom. She saw a world out of balance. A world where humanity, in its arrogance, had tampered with forces it did not understand, only to be horrified by the result. The creature she conceived was not just a monster. It was a product of its environment. It was born of the cold, the darkness, and the profound anxiety of 1816. She called it Frankenstein. That same summer, Lord Byron, staring at the same bleak sky, wrote a poem. It begins, "I had a dream, which was not all a dream, the bright sun was extinguished." He called it darkness. It is one of hidden horrors of the year without a summer, a new, modern, secular apocalypse. Not one of divine wrath, but of cold, simple, material extinction. The world did not end. But it was forever changed. The year without a summer became a hinge point in human history. It was a massive, external shock that broke old patterns and forced new, desperate innovations. The famine in New England triggered the first great wave of American westward migration. Tens of thousands of families abandoned their frozen, rocky farms and pointed their wagons toward the Ohio Valley, looking for a new, more stable climate. They were the first American climate refugees. In Germany, the catastrophic failure of the oat crop made horses prohibitively expensive. A German baron named Karl von Drais, seeking a new way for men to move without animal power, tinkered. He built a wooden frame with 2 wheels and a rudimentary steering mechanism. He called it the Lauf machine, or running machine. We call it the bicycle. It was an invention born not of leisure, but of necessity. And the sky itself changed art. The vivid, almost psychedelic sunsets that persisted for years after the eruption, caused by light scattering off the stratospheric aerosols, were not lost on artists. J.M.W. Turner, the great painter of light, began to fill his canvases with extraordinary, lurid, and dramatic skies. The spectacular reds and oranges in his work were not just romanticism. He was painting the sulfur. He was painting Tambora. The volcano had, in effect, become a global art director. The veil eventually lifted. The sulfur fell from the sky. The seasons, hesitant at first, returned to their rhythm.
It was a terrible winter,
The sun,
colder than
once
any
again,
man had
felt
seen
warm.
before. They called
Humanity, as it always
1800
does,
froze to
moved on.
death.
The year without a summer faded into folklore, a strange tale for a winter's night. But the mountain remembers. And so does the ice. Today, when scientists drill deep into the polar ice caps, they are reading the planet's autobiography. In that library of ice, the layer for 1815 to 1816 is unmistakable. It is a thin, acidic scar, packed with sulfate, a chemical signature of Tambora's global reach. It is a silent witness. A message, written in ice, that the world is a single, connected system. That an event on one side of the globe can bring famine and innovation, poetry and death, to the other. The year without a summer is no longer just a story. It is a blueprint. It revealed how thin the membrane of civilization truly is. How quickly the systems that feed us, shelter us, and organize us can be brought to their knees by a change in the sky. Tambora taught us that the atmosphere is not a given. It is a mechanism, and it can be broken. We no longer wait for volcanoes to change our air. We have taken that power for ourselves. The question of 1816, what has broken the world, is no longer one of mystery. It is one of accountability.